This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London.
Okay everyone, I think we'll get started. So welcome. I'll just start off by introducing myself. I'm Damien. I'm the Director of the Human Rights Consortium here in the School of Advanced Study in the University of London. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Consortium in a minute, but just to say that we're going to switch around the order a little bit because I've got to rush off to another meeting, but I will come back because I should imagine this is going to be far more interesting than the meeting I have to go to. So I'll start off and then Sophie and then Carl will follow up. So, okay, well, welcome to this really interesting event. It looks like a wonderful programme of sessions for this afternoon. So, I'll just tell you a little bit about the Consortium, but before that, actually, I want to thank the other organisers and sponsors. Okay, so it's the University of Exeter, the Arts and Humanities Research Council and Minority Rights Group. Okay, so we are merely the hosts for today. But that's one of the things that the Human Rights Consortium does, and that is to collaborate and to host events and to network and promote and facilitate research nationally and internationally. That's the official language. Okay, so one of the things we like to do is to use our interests and reach out and collaborate and share ideas, and conferences and workshops spring out of that, but also research projects. So I'll just show you a little bit of our website here, and this is the Consortium's main page, and our research is listed under projects, and we have a major project on Indigenous peoples and minorities. I work a lot on environmental justice as well. So they're the two most productive projects. We also work with the International Journal of Human Rights, so I'm the editor-in-chief of that. So a lot of our projects produce special issues for that journal as well. So it's really just to say, think about us whenever you're working on anything human rights related, and if you want to hold events in London, then that's one of the things we can do. But also possibly use today as a springboard for future collaborations. And that also involves a lot of work with activists as well as scholars, okay, and practitioners as well. So basically we've got, it's all fairly self-evident on there, but just have a look, and we also have like a sign up for email alerts and things like that for our activities, so just bear us in mind. So how it sits within the school, basically the school is 9 research institutes. There's no sort of undergraduate teaching, it's very research driven, and the Consortium brings all of those interested in human rights together to work nationally and internationally. But in essence, it's sort of like a human rights centre as such, okay? So just bear us in mind for future events. Sure. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Sophie, but I will be rejoining you shortly. But enjoy and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I'll hand over to you because I speak last.
Okay. Yes, of course. So thank you. My name is Soderbergh. I'm Director of Policy and Communications at Minority Rights Group here in London, and it's a huge pleasure and privilege to be here with you today, and I'd like to express my thanks to the co-organisers, and especially then the School of Advanced Study, for hosting us. For Minority Rights Group, this event feels very timely and appropriate. We held a series of events 4 years ago at the time of the launch of this briefing, Israel's Denial of the Bedouin, which was based on field research conducted by my former colleague Farah Millar. The report is still available online, and you can download it from our website, minorityrights.org. And that report led to a hearing which we held at the Houses of Parliament here in the UK, and also visits by the activists whom we had invited to speak here in London. We took them then to the European Parliament to meet with parliamentarians there. And all of this was a direct response, and you may very well have guessed it already, to the Israeli cabinet's approval of a Prawer Plan a couple of months earlier in the autumn of 2011, which foresaw the displacement of tens of thousands of Bedouin in the Naqab. And we'll be hearing, of course, more about the plan, what's happened to it, and the campaigning that it engendered both locally, nationally, and internationally later this afternoon. Meanwhile, I thought I'd assist by providing a bit of an international backdrop and reminding you of some of the developments that have occurred, especially in UN circles, that might have a bearing on the discussions this afternoon. And first of all, I do realize that the Israeli government and courts refuse to recognize the Bedouin status as an indigenous people. But I think it's good to remind ourselves that indigenous people's rights have received a very, very strong boost at the international level just over the past couple of years. We have, for instance, the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples a little over a year ago, at which the General Assembly reaffirmed its commitment to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and also the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. And I think that that's hugely significant, because basically we're seeing an evolution taking place before our eyes where these fundamental concepts are getting stronger and stronger by the day. The other event that I'd like to remind all of us about are the Sustainable Development Goals and the discussions leading up to their approval by the General Assembly just a few days ago. And now I'm not going to take up too much of your time. One could spend hours discussing the SDGs, but we aren't going to do that. But I just want to mention a few aspects about the SDGs that I think are relevant to this afternoon. One is the overarching principle of leaving no one behind. Another aspect is that there is now an explicit goal that the international community has gathered round of reducing inequality within and among countries. And I feel that this is particularly relevant to the discussion this afternoon. Moreover, there is a goal, Goal 1.4, that focuses on rights to economic resources, as well as access to basic services, ownership, and control over land. Now, I should say that that goal right now, as it's formulated, focuses on gender equality and then access and control over land. Of course, a very worthwhile and important goal in itself, but there is a coalition of international organizations and NGOs that are pushing for an additional indicator dealing with community land rights as a critical aspect to sustainable development. So that's a bit of a work in progress, but it means that the right to land is an area where we may see very rapid development going on just in the coming months or so. Finally, and a little bit more overarching with regard to the SDGs, one is that unlike the MDGs, the predecessors, the Millennium Development Goals, the SDGs do bring a human rights-based approach to development, which I think is a significant step forward. And secondly, is that they hold all states accountable, whereas the MDGs felt very much like the developed world talking down to the developing world, if I may. But the SDGs are meant to be a framework for all countries. So hopefully, some of these developments at the international level that, after all, have taken place just within those 4 years since we issued this briefing, that they may provide tools for Bedouin activists on the ground in the near future. And we'll now turn this afternoon to hear more about the struggle of Bedouin women activists and how they've perhaps already been drawing on these international developments. And I'll look forward to discussing in more detail what these further developments can bode for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl, for giving us this very good introduction, I think, to an afternoon that I'm looking forward very much. My name is Sophie Richter-Devroe. I'm from the University of Exeter, and I would like to give a short introduction now to how we from the University of Exeter and through this grant from the HRC came to sit here all together with you in the room. But first, let me also thank the co-organizers, the MRG, and the School of Advanced Studies who are hosting us here today. Of course, I would like to thank the HRC who's funding the event. And particularly, I want to thank my two co-organizers, Mansoor and Sasra from the University of Exeter and Richard-Devroe from the University of Oxford. These two are my buddies. These two are the ones who introduced me to the Naqab 5 years ago when we held a conference in Exeter in 2010. It was, I guess, the first international conference on the Naqab Bedouin. At this time, our aim was to bring together the scholars who are working on the topic and try to challenge also the kinds of perspectives and paradigms through which the Naqab had been studied. We tried to push forward to consider the Naqab Bedouin not as a separate and distinctive group, but as part of Palestine studies. From there, a long journey began, which I hope will be even longer. We published the proceedings of the conference in a Routledge book in 2014 entitled The Naqab Bedouin The Naqab Bedouin and Colonialism, New Perspectives. So quite like our title here today. Since 2 years, I've been working on this project funded by the HRC. The title is Gender and Settler Colonialism, Oral Histories of Naqab Bedouin Women. And I have, together with Mansoor and Sasra, held several community-based activities in the Naqab, because one of our main aims with this project has also been not to be isolated in an academic field, but really work with the community and also reach out to development practitioners and policymakers to raise awareness about the situation in the Naqab. So together with Mansoor, we have done several oral history workshops in Rahat, one of the Bedouin townships, the biggest of the Bedouin townships. And we have worked together with 20 to 25 young history students from the community. We did also, we also visited with them the Palestinian museums in East Jerusalem. We brought scholars to introduce them to the discipline of oral history, and we started to think about local projects that can raise awareness that it might be quite a good idea to ask your grandmother and grandfather what has been happening. Because, of course, here one of the crucial issues in this context is to start to re-evaluate your own history, your own history telling, the own narratives, which are often run counter to the hegemonic Israeli ones. Now, this event today, I'm very happy to now that we are coming to the close of the project, to have brought us here together in this room, and that we have an event that really brings from the Naqab local activists, young women and men, but mainly women, which I find important, to come here and tell us the newest developments, the updates of what is really happening on the ground. These are, of course, these young activists and scholars, of course, represent the continuity of political struggle and voices, but they also bring new perspectives, and I think it is really a very special and unique chance that we can listen to them today. So I really would very much like to welcome our speakers once more here to this event. I will not give a long overview of what the day will be about, because I'm very aware that the speakers can do this much better than me, but overall I think we have a very good platform to discuss various issues. We will have a more historicizing perspective to provide the background to the current struggle in the Naqab. We will get a legal perspective. We will hear about activism, particularly women's activism, and we will also get specific perspectives from the quite very strong youth movement and youth activism in the Naqab. So this really, I think, is a very special event where, which we can see as a platform for young activists, local Naqab activists and scholars to bring their voices to a wider audience. And it is with this that I want to pass over to you. Thank you.